I think it's a little bit easier of an opponent coming in this week. We got Flusy coming to town. His defense is giving up even more yards per game than the Bears are.
Are the Bears a bad team in terms of so bad that it's hard to envision them taking the next 2 weeks and taking advantage of beatable opponents? Because are they staring at 0-4 in your mind?
Off the jump, I picked the Cowboys just off of watching the Bears, but I went back last night. I watched the tape again. I watched the All-22 and the TV copy, and they're not as far off as you might think. I think there are some glaring holes and weaknesses here. The penalties. You can't keep putting yourself in these situations to where you're behind the chains and expect to beat good teams. That is something that's going to shoot yourself in the foot. I told you guys last time I was in here, the first thing I ever heard Bill Belichick say in a meeting was to learn how to win, you got to first learn how not to lose. And how do you not lose? By not getting 8 penalties, not getting 12 penalties in inopportune times.
I've heard Patrick Manley, I think it might have been on the pre- or post-game show, but when they talk about penalties, this is the longest tenured Bear. He says it's on the players. It's not necessarily on the coaches.
Yes.
I've always believed that it's a combination of both, but the coaches can coach that out of a team, can they not?
Well, you make it so terrifying to commit a penalty.
That's part of coaching. That's what you're alluding to.
As far as the false starts, I think the coaches can be so over the top on the false starts and the cadence that you literally are terrified of committing a false start, and those should be a non-factor. And I keep going back to New England, but just seeing how they did things, and I've told you guys this before, you jump, you flinch, you do anything. You don't wait for the coach. You know what's coming. You take off sprinting around the field for 800 meters, and then you get to come back to practice. Guess what? You're not going to jump. You're not going to false start next time. You're going to make sure you hear the snap count and know what you're doing.
Jimmy Johnson famously cut Kerwin Richards on the sidelines at Soldier Field because he fumbled. And the guy walks off the field and he's told, you're flying commercial home, you're no longer on the team. And they were going to a Super Bowl at that point. But that was already a team that they had put together, established, set the precedents, and they had everybody on edge understand. They also had they were loaded with talent. What is the difference? Like you talk about going into New England, that was a well-oiled machine when you got there. And everybody knew what the standards were, and everybody followed them, and there was no questioning who the leader of that group was. I wonder what it's like for Ben Johnson to come in a place like here, where guys talk a lot everywhere about I want to be held accountable and I want good coaching. And then you hear, well, this is not championship level. I believe him. I mean, it isn't. But how do you establish that? How do you get everyone on board? Do you have to bench someone? Do you have to cut someone? Do you have to do something dramatic to get that message across?
I think you do. And if a guy's not practicing up to the standard, guess what? He's losing reps. Guess what? He's not starting. You got to do things like that to let him know you're serious. And I don't think Ben Johnson's got all his guys in here yet. Obviously, he's only been here for an offseason. The guys that he doesn't like the nice guys, I think, like Ryan Poles does, the guys that are like him. I think Ben Johnson likes the guys that are dogs, the guys that are tail kickers. And I'm not going to use the word tail when we go off air here. So he likes those guys that are going to be, abrupt in the locker room. You didn't practice well. And I played with those guys. And obviously I played with a ton of great quarterbacks. So it made it simple. But if we had a bad practice in Detroit, Stafford would have us up. We'd have our butts in the meeting room watching practice at 7 a.m, pointing out what we got to do better. And if we don't do this, then we're not going to win and you're not going to get on the field. So that's the type of stuff that you do when you have leaders that truly believe in practice is what is going to make you win these games. And it's the old adage, you never rise to the occasion, you fall back to the level of your preparation, and that is something that rings true in the National Football League.
And I think you look at the Lions, the team the Bears just got drilled by, and they have a roster by now full of guys who in Dan Campbell's world and language and lexicon are willing to bite your kneecaps off. They're guys who have that mentality when they go to practice, when they take on games, and they didn't want to just beat the Bears. They wanted to embarrass the Bears. That's what Ben Johnson was talking about before the season. You're right. He's talking at a different level than his players can't meet. They can't reach that level. Whether it's intensity or execution, Ben Johnson is sounding as frustrated and direct as he is because he doesn't have a locker room full of guys that are matching that. And I don't know when that happens, but I think it's somewhat refreshing to at least hear where the bar is, and that's where he's going to keep it.
Yeah, and I could tell you from experience, I've been in practice with Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell was my tight end coach in New England. I had a full training camp, OTAs, off season, and then most of the season before I got hurt with the Saints, right? So this guy is going to, if you are not practicing up to your standard, you are going to hear about it, but that's something, he's the type of coach that you want to go out there and practice hard for. You're giving him every rep. He's done it before. He's out there letting you know if you're up to the standard or if you're not. And most of the time with a guy like him behind you, watching you, telling you exactly what you're doing right or wrong, you're going to make sure that you're giving everything you got. And it's about preparation. You can't just say, okay, we're going to go out here and have a good practice. I'm going to practice hard today. No, you got to prepare for practice. They give you scripts. You go home, you look at the scripts, you put yourself in the scenario, you go, okay, they could give us this defense, they could give us this defense, they could give us defense. There'll probably be some competitive periods where you're going against the Bears defense, Dennis Allen, just to keep the competition up, but there's also going to be some defenses you're going against Matt Eberflus's defense, so to make sure that you got the assignment right. But you have to go home and prepare for practice almost like it's a game.
That's not happening, though.
No, but I mean, here's my dilemma with this. And we've talked about this. Like, for instance, you break down the penalties. And the guy with 4 penalties is your right tackle, not your left tackle. Your left tackle has a couple penalties, but he can't block anyone. So you're in a position now where, well, we got to show the world, and we got to you can't have 2 false starts. You can't have a low block. He cut a guy, and that holding call was probably a bad one. But hey, we're going to show everybody something, but you can't really take out that guy because you don't have anyone. Well, you might have someone behind him, but the other guy's the problem. And I think the same thing exists at different parts of the field where, you'd love to send a message, but unfortunately, everybody's injured in the secondary. So you can't take a guy out because he's the best guy you got left. So do you have to change the way you play then? Do you have to change your style of defense, or do you have to have guys run down the field and catch touchdown passes against you? Throw your hands up.
Dennis Allen was running man-to-man coverage at the 4th highest clip in the NFL, and unfortunately with Jalen Johnson being out, you can't do that no more. Here's a stat that I almost found crazy. I told David, I just told Mully. Tyreek Stevenson, passer rating when targeted is 158.3.
That's perfect.
A perfect passer rating when targeted is 158.3. If there was nobody out there guarding the guys that Tyreek Stevenson's guarding, the passer rating would be the same.
You're going on air when you're going against
Tyreek
Stevenson.
You're playing routes against air.
Yeah, 7-on-7.
7-on-7. And watching the film, like I said, I went back and watched it. He is going against Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yes.
So you do have a little bit of, okay, this is tough. He's playing against one of the best receivers in football, but he's not even close in some of these plays, and he's just getting beat like he stole something, and it's not going to get much easier because you got CeeDee Lamb coming to town.
Yes.
You got George Pickens coming to town. You got some big-time receivers now, so I think Dennis Allen, he's going to have to change the way he calls the defense.
He is, and I think that when we talk about, and we've discussed this earlier before you got here, the Bears are trending toward either having to bench, cut, or trade somebody. And Tyreek Stevenson is a great candidate for either one of those. But you can't do that because you have no depth behind him.
None.
You don't have any depth.
About it, Kyler Gordon is week to week. That means he's not playing this week in my world. You got Jalen Johnson, they won't admit it, but he's kind of said it. He's done for the year.
Yeah.
You got, the other corner on IR. You got a fifth-round pick who's lost for the season already for some weird reason no one talks about. You got, Jalen Jones, who you signed off the street because he was here before.
Didn't practice yesterday.
He didn't practice yesterday because he developed a hamstring.
Yeah.
They're apparently contagious. I don't know how you would send a message with Tyreek Stevenson.
You can't really.
No, you
but
gotta,
you can't change the way you play.
Zone. You've got to play zone.
You can't do that, right?
You can change the way you play, like you guys said. I mean, Nick McLeod isn't the answer.
Yes.
You're not going to get much from Nashawn Wright. Kevin Byard isn't playing at a high level right now. He doesn't seem to. I think he's a veteran. You put him in zone. He's lost a step, but he's so intelligent and smart. His mistakes. The crazy thing is they weren't physical. They were mental. Really? He's looking at the wrong thing. He's taking the wrong guy. There's a touchdown out in the flat. Looks like that's his man. His eyes are in the backfield. They take it out to the flat. There's the play to where
Nashawn Wright
is slow to react, but a lot of it is him just taking the wrong guy. It's mental, and you wouldn't expect a guy who's been in the league for 11 years to make mental mistakes. But to go back to your point, there isn't anything you can do as far as benching Tyreek Stevenson. They don't have the dogs out there at cornerback. Maybe when Kyler Gordon gets back, you can try to play him at outside again. I don't think that's smart. Guy coming off an injury. But yes, you got to change up the defense, and that's tough because Dennis Allen has averaged a top 10 defense since he took over in New Orleans. This guy isn't a guy that scheme doesn't work. If this was a guy that we didn't know if his scheme worked or not, okay, this could be on Dennis Allen. His scheme has worked pretty much everywhere he's been and every year he's had. So to me, a lot of it has to do with the players he's been given.
So yesterday we heard Ben Johnson talk about what they're not getting at practice. They're not practicing at a championship caliber level. And I thought Mark Grote asked a question, and it was a terrific one and appropriate, but it's almost like if you didn't know any better, you think that was a planted question because Ben Johnson was so direct. It was like he was dying to say this. He was dying to share this. He was dying to challenge his players to increase their level of intensity. And then they went out and practiced on an unseasonably warm day for 2 hours during the season.
Full pads. Clay,
you've been in these locker rooms. I'm sure you've heard versions of this message before. How do these players respond, and is this a test of who's going to be with us and who's not going to be with us?
I've had situations like this on losing teams. You're going out there and you're competing for reps. I mean, there was some reps out there, even guys like Rome. Like Rome had a great day receiving. I thought there were some blocks he could do better on the edge. I thought that they want to get Luther Bird involved, but to me, Olamide Zaccheaus is playing dang good football.
Yeah, he's
getting open. He's run after the catch. He's blocking. I'm like, why are you going to take this guy out? This guy isn't the problem. I know that's not what Chicago wants to hear. They said, you drafted a second-round pick. Give him the options. Yes, you can get Colson Loveland more involved, give him an opportunity, but even watching the routes he's running, he doesn't seem super confident in everything he's doing, even his drag routes. He's sitting in routes, zones where maybe he should be sitting a yard to the left. He's kind of covering himself up by a defender. I'm like, that's not the Colson Loveland that we've seen in training camp catching balls. So I think there's a lot of improving that some of these young guys need to do, and I want to see Colson Loveland catch balls more than anybody, David. You know I'm a big tight end guy. Get the tight end the ball.
You are.
And I think Colson Loveland's going to be good, but you can't just give these guys reps in the locker room. That will not go over well. If everybody can see who's playing better, the players, the coaches, just to kind of appease giving your first-round pick or your second-round pick a lot of plays. No, if Olamide Zaccheaus is playing better, he won the competition, he gets the first passes.
You bench him, you lose credibility.
You lose credibility with your locker room. So I think there is a spot to get Luther Burden involved. You can get Colson Loveland more involved, but they have to earn it. You can't give these guys anything just because of where they were drafted.
You know, I'd like to talk about players and their mentality for a second. You've been there and done it. I'm very curious. When I covered the league, you would have to, at the end of the year, you have to grade everybody. So you'd have to give them a grade, and you talk to the coaches, you talk to the people, and you settle on these grades. And it was a terrible project, and I'm so happy I don't have to do that anymore. But like there was an offensive lineman I gave a C one year, which again I didn't just make it up out of whole air. He went nuts, and he kind of came up to me and wanted to talk about it, and I'm chatting with him, and this happened when I covered the NBA quite often. He tells me, I'm making X number of dollars, and you give me a C. What about you gave a C to this guy who's making 6 times more money than me? And in the NBA, everybody knows everybody's salary and where the hierarchy of salary is. It's the same thing in the NFL. Everybody knows. We're criticizing a guy making $500,000 a year while a $13 million player is not catching a lot of heat. He's done nothing. It is, some guy's making $27 million. You better get to the quarterback. You better impact the game. And everybody in the locker room knows that.
Yeah, it's like you look at Montez Sweat. Montez Sweat had an okay game. Obviously, Tyreek Stevenson, among the other things. He might have been sabotaging the Bears. I don't know. But he has that.
That's how bad it was.
Yeah.
He did it on purpose.
That sack, I mean, Montez Sweat, you give up the sack, then you have a touchdown coming up a couple plays later. Montez Sweat played maybe like a top 30 edge rusher, but when you're getting paid top 10 money, you expect more. He's got to be this level of player. Dio Dangbo had a couple nice run stuffs. We don't, you're getting paid 18th most edge rushing money. You need more than that.
Yeah.
Watching the film, like, okay, that was solid by Dio, but he's not getting to the quarterback. So exactly like Mully's saying, there is something to where when a guy is getting paid X amount of dollars, you expect him to play a certain way. He might be outplaying this guy that's making $1 million, but when you're making 25, you got to be making $25 million plays.
It's an interesting point, and it brings us to the offensive line. So when we come back, you're going to stay for another segment, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the offensive line, which is highly paid, and the expectations are because of how much they're getting paid. We'll talk about that when we come back.
And that is the voice of the Bears center. That's Drew Dahlman talking about here's the thing.
Great question by Mark Grote about getting the yard. Asking the good questions this week.
But Grote's spectacular. I still wonder when you look at this group, this offensive line, it's almost like they're introducing themselves to each other. They're just kind of getting started. I think it was John Gruden who once said that an offensive line is like a chorus line. They have to be choreographed, and you have to have everyone step and 2 and 3, and if they don't, they're just kicking each other. And the Bears' offensive line feels like they've just been introduced.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that. You got to get to know the type of steps the guy takes next to you. You got to get to know how he takes on a combination block. If there's a tray block, which is a down block on a power, how does he take half the man? If it's a C block, which is basically a zone C block up to the next level, you got to know how he takes half a man. Different guys do different things, and it takes a while to get to know how your guy works next to you, and that I think is a little bit more important even on the interior because there's so many different alignments with these nose tackles, these shades, how you're going to go, how much help you're going to get from your guy. And I think we've seen struggle from the inside. These guys don't know how much help each other are going to give. And you've seen that with Dahlman. You've seen that with Jonah Jackson. And I think Tooney's been good. I think Braxton Jones is a guy that hasn't been playing well. I have a couple numbers here. I know David loves the numbers I bring. He's responsible for 77.8% of the pressure allowed by the Bears offensive line this season. Braxton Jones has 13 pressures and 2 sacks in 2 games, David. He allowed pressure on 19% of pass plays, which was the second worst rate in the NFL in week 2.
So that sounds like as much as we have harped on the lack of push from the interior 3, who have been well paid and they were required to change the offensive line, the biggest liability remains the left tackle?
So look at the 3rd and 32. First off, he shouldn't be in that situation.
Should not.
Braxton Jones has a face mask on a play. I'm not sure it's that play, but Braxton Jones gets chip help on Aiden Hutchinson. a nice chip. And then he gets spun on, and Aiden Hutchinson has Caleb's in his grasp. Caleb tries to escape. He throws the ball, interception, Kerry Joseph. Okay, there's a couple of times, and then Aiden Hutchinson comes back, pushes Braxton Jones all the way into Caleb. Caleb throws a errant pass, and then obviously Braxton gives up a sack to Aiden Hutchinson. It's tough because that is Aiden Hutchinson. Was his first sack of the season.
He's very good.
But he's getting a lot of help there too. And I know Darnell Wright gave up a sack, and that's something you can't see when he is a guy that you are expecting to be a top-level tackle. I still believe that Darnell Wright will be a top tackle in the league.
You do?
I think I do. He can take care of these penalties. There's some dumb penalties there. But if you can take care of the penalties, the guy is just so athletically gifted. You don't see men his size move like that. Okay, that reminds me of a guy I played next to for 4 years in Philadelphia, Jason Peters.
Wow.
And that's him in his prime. Like, guys don't move like that.
Clay.
I'm not saying
whoa.
he's Jason Peters.
Okay.
He reminds me of some of the stuff that JP could do.
Athletically.
JP was
can
a
work with
freak
that, I
athlete.
guess.
Darnell Wright is a freak athlete.
So he's in his third year. You'd like to see him be more consistent.
You'd like to see him break out in his third year.
Yeah.
and avoid the dumb penalties that are keeping us from being on board with the idea that he can be an elite pass protector and elite in the run game.
That people don't understand how drive killing these penalties are. If it's a holding call, you realize that's 1st and 20.
Yeah.
What is it? I don't know the statistics on that, but next time I'm on here, I'm going to find it. It can't be high to continue a drive at 1st and 20, even 1st and 15. You are setting yourself behind when you are not a great offense and you are going to have to battle in these games. Those penalties shoot you in the foot, and it really just changes the dynamic of the play calls.
See, like, okay, the first penalty of the game was the kickoff out of bounds. So that's bad. That first play of the game, that's bad. But when you go in at halftime and you come out and you get a false start penalty, you had given up a touchdown at the end of the half, and now you're off schedule and you're behind the chains because you're running back. Like this, you script stuff at halftime. You know what the play is when you're coming out. How do you jump off sides? And that is just, it's so frustrating because you're not going to be able to get back in the game. You're punished yet again.
You're absolutely right. You go in at halftime, and it's quick, but you go in, the offense meets, the defense meets. Okay, guys, here's what's working. Here's what they're giving us on these formations, these personnel groupings. Here's what we like. We're going to come out, and we're going to hit this early. We're going to hit this early. We're going to hit this early. It's fast-paced, but you're seeing everything that you like. The things that are going to be the top calls, and you're going, okay, and you're making your mental notes. Okay, got to be prepared for that. Got to be prepared for that. Oh, that's what they're giving us on 12 personnel with the solo formation. Oh, that's what they're giving us with a wing formation. So you got to know exactly what you're getting there. Now you do, and it's something that you should be very crisp on. You make those adjustments, and now you see how they're playing you a certain way, because sometimes you come out in the game, and obviously they'll switch up a certain formation. They'll play you a different way than they did last week, because they know when they see this way you played a certain formation last week that you're going to try to take advantage of that.
So let's talk about the run game. Let's talk about DeAndre Swift. There's a lot of opinions in Chicago about what he does to the running game.
He was the guy who was offsides to open the season.
I know he had the penalty, and I think that's something you can't ignore. But as far as running style and how he has contributed to either the running game working or not working and the lack of a complement, how do you see, now, first of all, Clay, DeAndre Swift's season to this point, and can they win in the running game with him being your primary back?
It's tough with DeAndre Swift with me because I like the player. I think this guy plays hard. He's a true professional. He's a guy that gives it everything he's got. But I just think there needs to be another guy there. When you come out of the draft and you don't have a running back, okay, first off, you should have went free agency and tried to find someone. Then you go to the draft, and then what's left after free agency? We're just looking. J.K. Dobbins has 150 yards in 2 games.
Yes,
and Nick Chubb has
103 yards in 2 games. Both those guys would have been ideal complements to DeAndre Swift, and it only would have cost you money.
And you think DeAndre Swift is playing well, but then guess what? What are you looking at across the field when the Detroit Lions are on the field?
Oh, you're looking at the 1-2 punch.
Sonic and Knuckles.
Sonic and Knuckles. I couldn't come up with it.
So I'm looking at this film and I'm going, I like what DeAndre Swift's doing, but then you watch the other side of the ball and you go, wow, that's just a different level.
Yeah.
So it's like DeAndre Swift is fine, he's okay, but if you want to have this running game like Ben Johnson does, there was a reason. When Ben Johnson came to Detroit for the first time, DeAndre Swift was there. He led the Lions in rushes. The next year, Ben Johnson took over. He had a specific role. He still played, but he was a third down guy. He was getting the ball in space. He was catching passes. Jamal Williams was actually the guy that ran more of the actual running plays, scored the touchdowns, did all that. There's a role for DeAndre Swift. He plays hard. He run hard. I respect him because I love players like that just don't care about the opinion and are going to go play hard. But he is just limited physically and needs a counterpart.
He doesn't really have one now. Kyle Monunga carried 7 times for 28 yards. I don't think he's there yet.
That was circumstance. The game was over when they got to that point.
Roshan Johnson is a special teamer, in the words of Ben Johnson. That's his role on this team.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Roshan, it was telling to me when I'm listening to the press conference. I don't know which media member asked him. They go, what's Roshan's role? He doesn't seem to have a role. And Ben goes, he does have a role. And I'm like, okay, let's hear this. I'm like, what role has Roshan? Special teams. I go, oh, no. I go, special teams. And I'm like, did I even see Roshan when I was watching the film right before I came here?
Yeah.
I saw him make a couple blocks on special teams, and they weren't great.
So
that's not going to help.
Clay Harbor with us. What happens on Sunday? You see a Dallas team that has limitations defensively, made a terrible decision to trade away their pass rusher, and you see their defense being, a sieve. But they got some great receivers. They got the quarterback. They've got some explosives in them. Let's
they
put
sure
it
do.
that way.
Yeah, so obviously the first thing that scares me is the Tyreek Stevenson and CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb's one of the best receivers in the NFL. Okay, George Pickens is one of the better number 2 receivers, so that's going to be tough. Dak Prescott is playing at an extremely high level. He's second in the NFL in adjusted EPA. Okay, opposing quarterbacks, like I said, against the Bears are just tearing him up, right? The Bears are 29th in allowing opposing quarterbacks to complete 75% of their passes. Now you bring Dak Prescott into town, that's going to be tough. They have the 4th highest rate of man coverage. Dennis Allen loves playing man, so I think he's going to have to switch that up if you want a chance to stop these guys. What I think Dak Prescott might be the 3rd quarterback in a row to win the NFC Offensive Player of the Week against the Bears.
Seriously,
that's something else.
So easy to predict.
The Bears have to run the ball to keep him off the field as much as possible. So everything we're talking about, the offensive line and DeAndre Swift, they've got to find a way to control the clock.
Football.
But Eberflus, Dallas is giving up more yards per game than even the Bears, the 3rd most passing yards per game. The Cowboys are actually 31st in allowing opposing quarterbacks to complete 76.6% of their passes. They're even worse than the Bears, and they are allowing a 114 opposing passer rating. The only team worse than them is the Bears.
So Matt Eberflus might contribute to a Bears victory this week, something he didn't do a lot in 3 years.
They let Russ cook. Russ hasn't been cooking. Russ had 450 yards and 3 touchdowns.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, Russ hasn't cooked in a while.
Russ hasn't cooked in a
while.
Russ
has cooked a couple different franchises.
Yeah, he's been ordering out a lot. Uber Eats for Russ, man. It has been Uber Eats.
It's great stuff. Clay, thank you. Thanks for coming in. Always great to see you.
Go get a workout in now, okay?
I'm going to.
You look a little flabby today.
I know. I'm sorry. Go hit the cold plunge afterwards.
All right.
Oh my gosh. Great stuff. Thank you, Clay. It's Mully and Haugh, Chicago Sports Radio 6-7 to the Score.